Well, the U.S. Senate had planned to take a vote on the National Defense Authorization Act before returning home for the Thanksgiving holiday. But it appears it might be a little more difficult than they anticipated. Senator Rand Paul is holding up the vote until an amendment he's proposed is voted on. The amendment has to do with affirming the Sixth Amendment to the Constitution and the indefinite detention of U.S. citizens. It states a citizen of the United States who is captured or arrested in the United States and detained by the armed forces of the United States pursuant to the authorization for use of military force shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have previously been ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. Well, here to discuss what all this means, Brian Doherty, a senior editor with Reason. Brian, what's the deal here? Why would an amendment to a bill be needed that just affirms what's already in the Constitution?
Indeed, and the really sad thing is that the Senate really doesn't want to vote on this. They don't even want to be on the record as saying they are or are not for complete military tyranny, martial law in the United States. I mean, it's great that Rand Paul is doing this. It's sad that he had to do it, and it's doubly sad that the rest of the Senate is doing everything they can to avoid having to vote on it at all.
This is an issue, of course, that both Rand Paul and his father, Ron Paul, who you wrote a book about, have been very vocal. I want to play just a quick snippet of Rand Paul speaking about this last year.
Some say that to prevent another 9/11 attack, we must fight terrorism with a war mentality and not treat potential attackers as criminals. For combatants captured on the battlefield, I agree. But these are people captured or detained in America, American citizens.
It seems pretty simple, but by some of his Republican counterparts, Rand Paul is seen a little bit as a black sheep. What do you think that's all about?
The Republican Party is just very jingoistic. They love war, and if anything is presented to them under the excuse of keeping America safe from the terrorist threat, they are willing to throw out the Constitution. They're willing to throw out trial by jury. They're willing to throw out habeas corpus, and it's disgraceful. And it's sad that Rand Paul is about the only Republican in the Senate willing to stand up for these things. But it is also great that he is able to do this, and he is still considered, and rightly so, a prospect for president in 2016. And I think he's going to do it, and he's going to be a bright light in the Republican Party when he does. The only guy out there still willing to stand up for the Constitution, even in the face of the so-called terror threat.
I know Senator Joe Lieberman is a senior member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, said he hopes he gets this done, that the Senate gets this done before the end of the year, but also noted partisan gridlock is a major reason for why it just might not. Talk a little bit about the politics of this.
Yeah. Harry Reid, the Democratic leader in the Senate, is very mad at Rand Paul for this. And he was telling reporters, hey, he wanted them to understand it's not the Democrats holding up this defense spending bill, it's the Republicans. But it's sad that the Democrats are not willing to be the party that stands up for civil liberties. I mean, I think in the end, Rand Paul probably will get barreled over on this, because all Reid has to do is call for a so-called cloture vote. He just needs 60 senators to say, hey, Rand Paul, you don't get to have this vote on, whether the military can just lock people up without a trial. And I'm suspecting that's probably going to happen. But what Rand Paul will have succeeded in doing is marking himself as the civil liberties Republican, and in essence shaming the rest of his colleagues, both Democrats and Republicans, for not wanting to go on the record about this very important issue.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, you say a lot of Democrats don't want to deal with this, but why not? I mean, a lot of people who align themselves with the left also say that they're civil libertarians, say that civil rights and civil liberties are important to all Americans. So why do you think, I mean, a bigger picture here, why is Rand Paul not getting a bunch of Democrats who say, hey, I want to work together with you on this and many other issues?
Because I think they're not really serious about civil liberties. I know they say they are, but especially in the face of a bill that's supposed to be protecting us from terror, they are afraid to seem like they are soft on terror. Rand Paul has the limited government sort of conservative bona fides that allows him to be brave on this in a way that many Democrats are not. And I'm afraid when it comes down to it, what's most important to many Democrats is merely questions of income redistribution. They're not really that serious about civil liberties. And Rand Paul and Ron Paul were sort of standing rebukes to liberals and Democrats who said they believed in civil liberties but were not brave enough to stand with the Pauls.
I mean, it's interesting if what you say is in fact true, that any member of this Congress should think that soft on terror is the same thing as giving someone that's arrested, an American citizen arrested, a trial. It's not like Rand Paul is asking for anyone to be let go if they're found out to be a U.S. citizen. He's just saying they deserve a trial, as is already stated, by the way, in the Sixth Amendment. It is interesting, but I think, Brian, one of the most interesting things is Senator John McCain. He himself detained and held as a prisoner of war for years during the Vietnam time. Seems not to care for Senator Rand Paul's amendment. What's going on here?
McCain has become the worst sort of defense hawk, anti-terror hawk since 2008. The Republican convention back in August, where Rand Paul got up and was willing to say, hey, if we're serious about cutting spending, we have to look at defense as well. McCain comes on after him and says, no, you cannot touch a penny of defense. McCain, I think, is just pandering to this sense that we are under great risk and great threat, which in fact, as near as we can tell, we're not, and that any respect for the Constitution, any talk of cutting defense spending by a penny is somehow being soft on our enemies. It's not true, and it's sad that McCain, who, as you said, should know better, should respect the rights of detainees and arrestees, is terrible on this issue.
I'll tell you what, it certainly is interesting being here in Washington for not even months, but years, having these senators, these congressmen really do nothing. Now they're sort of rushing to try to get lots of things done. But of course, the politics of it all is quite interesting. We thought this was an important story. Brian Doherty, senior editor at Reason.com. Thanks so much.
Thank you.